We just want someone to talk to. Hi, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Steve.
And this is Marvel Reread Club. Sorry, that kind of came out sort of weird. Let's try that again.
All right.
Sounds sort of Scooby-Doo there.
I don't know. I kind of like the Scooby-Doo thing.
Sort of came out like Reread.
Like the rural juror.
Like the rural juror.
Yes.
Or Urban Fuhrer.
That's not one I'm familiar with.
No, that was the sequel to the rural juror. Jenna later starred in a sequel to the rural juror called Urban Fuhrer. Furor.
Oh boy. Enough with references to old episodes of 30 Rock. I don't think that's what the people come here for.
What? Okay. I thought this was the 30 Rock Rewatch podcast.
No. That's your other podcast. Your imaginary other podcast.
Yeah.
All right. So we are doing today, I believe, Fantastic Four number...
We're doing Fantastic Four number 79.
Then Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 5. Doctor Strange number 173. Submariner number 6. And Captain Marvel number 6.
Yes. So, should we go ahead and jump in? We are doing the books of October 1968. We've broken it into 3 episodes, really more than 3 episodes. We're slowed down to slower than a crawl here because we did 3 episodes spanning last month, but then we had to do an annuals episode. For October, we've broken it into 3 episodes, but then we're doing a special bonus episode, which I guess we haven't figured out if we're going to announce yet or not. And then we're going to do the next month of 3 comics, which will also be followed by an annuals episode. Are we ready to announce our bonus episodes, Steve?
Well, I mean, I think we can give at least the broad outlines.
Since these 2 Spectacular Spider-Man magazine issues were sort of in continuity and sort of out of continuity, we're using that as an excuse to make our episode covering these 2 magazines to be our first ever bonus episode. Our first bonus, we wanted to do a special treat for our Patreon patrons, and we figured that they deserved a little something extra. And so we are going to cover these 2 issues just for them. And so this is our big announcement. So if you are not a Patreon patron, it is time to go ahead and sign up. You can sign up for just a little bit of money, and then you can cancel after you listen to this episode. It's just going to be 1 bonus episode for now. We are going to have special guest Jeff Ryan back. Jeff Ryan, you'll recall, is the official biography of John Romita Sr. and John Romita Jr. He was on for 2 fantastic episodes a couple of months ago, and he is going to come back to talk about this 2-part John Romita Spectacular, and it's going to be fantastic.
Or one might say spectacular.
It will be spectacular. It will be monumentous.
Yes, and we do actually have another bonus episode in the can that we recorded a few years ago that we weren't sure what to do with, but that will probably eventually end up being released this way as well.
Yeah.
We're trying to give a little bit of something to our Patreon subscribers in addition to just the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping cover some of our hosting costs.
Yeah. And we're not promising we're going to have regular Patreon content. So we don't want everybody signing up going like, okay, I'm going to miss every other episode in case I sign up. This is 1 bonus. We may have another bonus, but we don't want you to think that if you don't pay that you're going to be missing out from now on.
Yeah, I generally am a fan of podcasts that I can listen to the heart of without having to do anything extra and without having ads. And so this is a compromise that we are coming up with. I hope everybody is okay with that.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope we're not pissing people off. These 2 magazines are sort of out of continuity. And so, if you miss them, you miss them. But I think everyone will really enjoy this episode. And we just wanted to do a special thank you for our Patreon patrons. But should we go ahead and do the books of October 1968 first?
I think we should do that. Yes, that's what I'm prepped for.
All right. Should we start with Fantastic Four number 79?
Yeah, let's start with Fantastic Four number 79. That sounds like a good plan.
All right. Should I do it or should you?
I'll go ahead and do this one, I think.
Okay.
So, Fantastic Four, This Monster Forever. On the cover, we have the Thing as the primary figure. In the background, we have a sort of ghostly image of Ben Grimm and his human form. And in the foreground, we have a menacing creature.
Mm-hmm. Just a little glimpse, a little over the shoulder of the menacing creature who you might feel like, well, he doesn't seem very significant. And indeed, he is not.
Don't tell him that. He might get upset. The title is slightly different on the inside. It's A Monster Forever? Question mark. Mighty Marvel's most masterful makers of modern day mythology, Stan the Man Lee and Jack King Kirby, have definitely done it again. Embellished by Jolton Joe Sinnott, lettered by adorable Artie Simek.
Mhm.
So we start with Ben Grimm in his human form looking at a photo of his thing form, worrying about seeing Alicia. Johnny and Crystal are there in the meantime. We have a lot of nice back and forth with them. I really like the Johnny and Crystal stuff in this issue. I mean, other than Johnny being a little bit jealous in a kind of an inappropriate way. At one point he says, "Who's jealous? You can kiss anyone you want to, just so long as his initials are Johnny Storm." And that's not necessarily so much for a problem. It's the way he's wrenching her arm as he does that.
Yeah.
That's a little unnerving. But for the most part, I really like their sort of physical business that they've got. They're very playful with each other, and their young love very much comes across in a physical way, which I kind of like.
Yeah, and they're goofing around with each other. They're making little jokes with each other. She's like, other boys call their dates a taxi, and he says, "Okay, so you're a taxi," and she says, "I had to fall for a comedian," which certainly sounds like not inhuman dialogue at this point. But
she's been
she's
she's been hanging out on Earth for a while now. I think she's picked up the lingo.
She's used to it. She's like, "You might as well flame off now. I didn't bring my suntan lotion." He says, "Your wish is my command." She says, "Promises, always promises." They're flirting around. Although you were talking about their physical interaction, it's fun that he is sort of carrying her on his back on page 3. But I not noticed that Kirby is making his things a little easier for himself. I think he has photocopied these 2 drawings of her on his back when it appears twice on page 3. I don't think Kirby redrew that when he had that happen in 2 different panels.
I don't know. There are changes. If it was a photostat, then he redrew a lot of details on the photostat. Just I'm zooming in on it here, and both of them have sort of stoic looks on their face in the first panel and smiles in the second panel. The blonde woman on the left side has her hand up on her face in the second panel, where she doesn't on the first.
Yeah.
The man smoking the pipe in front of her, the pipe is falling out of his mouth in startlement.
No, the
So that
people around them aren't photostated, but I think just Johnny and Crystal themselves, like you look at the hatching on his leg and the creases on his shorts, they're exactly the
yeah,
same.
yeah, you might be right, but they did clearly re-ink the mouths, though. They whited
Yeah.
out the mouths and then redid those.
Yeah.
But yes, you have a good point. They go off and do their own thing, and meanwhile Ben Grimm gets in a taxi to go see Alicia, and there's a bit of business with him being familiar with the doorman, and the doorman not knowing who the hell this is. That's being familiar with him, but he's going to Alicia's place. That's the Thing's girlfriend. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mr. Fantastic is interacting with Sue's OBGYN, I guess, and they're looking at some pictures of some sort of microscopic something or other that they've taken that seems to show some sort of mutated cells or something like that in the fetus. And
Mhm.
so he is very concerned, and he says, "I've got to tell Sue. She has the right to know, but I know in my heart that I can't." So he ends up not telling her anything, and she knows that he's hiding something. He knows that he, by all rights should be telling her, but this couple does have some communication issues.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's a reason they'll end up getting separated in about 10 years or less than that, isn't it? It's like 5 years from now, something like that.
Yeah. 5 years.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we haven't seen the Mad Thinker in a while, but for some reason, the police are just now dismantling a whole bunch of stuff from one of the Mad Thinker's hideouts. And they get to this one room that says, "Don't open in room temperature." And the cop's like, I'm just going to open this door.
Yeah.
And out comes an android. Apparently, if you'd opened it and it was in freezing temperatures, it would have been fine.
It's unclear if they're just like illiterate or if they are just take this sign as some sort of dare, or if they're like they think that, oh, since we've shut off the power, we don't need to worry about it. It's very unclear. But he's like, don't open in room temperature. It says robots, androids, what's it if? Might as well see what's in this crate. Hey, it's a man. Looks like he's been frozen stiff, but it's not possible. He's given off heat. And then look out, he is alive. The heat in the room must have done it. Ah. So I think maybe they just can't read.
I took it as the cops were like, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So anyway, it busts out its it's looking for some kind of guiding signal. It's supposed to expect some kind of signal that's going to tell it what to do and where to go. In the absence of this thing, it is just running amok in the city. We then see Ben and Alicia out to dinner, or out to lunch, I guess, at a nice fancy restaurant. He's like, hey, what's happening to us, baby? We're making with the small talk like a couple of strangers. And she says, I don't know, everything just seems different now. And she touches his face to sort of see what he looks like. And she says, your features have a rugged handsomeness. And he thinks, but I don't grab you like the thing did. I can tell by your touch. Anyway, he, for some bizarre reason, has brought with him the wizard's
Wonder gloves.
Wonder gloves.
Yeah,
yes.
I was going to go back to page 5. This is the most bizarre plot turn in the issue. Completely nonsensical. He thinks, as he's taking the cab to the restaurant with her, says, what if she finds plain Ben Grimm too different, too dull? I'm so shook up, I even brought the Wonder Gloves with me that we got from the wizard when he tried to clobber us. Now, this would make sense if it's like, I am scared of the world now that I am Ben Grimm and I am not strong, and I'm going to bring these Wonder Gloves, which will enable me to beat up people when I am not big and I am not strong. That would make sense, and that would be sort of touching and a nice bit of vulnerability from him. But no, it's almost as if he's like, oh, I just got so mixed up. I'm just so forgetful that I had these in my hand and I forgot to set them down. But he clearly does not have them. Like on page 12, he's sitting there and you can see that he has not brought anything with him and he does not have the gloves with him. And then he has them suddenly on the bottom of page 12. But also, it just makes no sense. Why is the Thinker's Android Man zeroing in on the gloves?
That's the other thing. That's the Mad Thinker. This is the Wizard. The Mad Thinker and the Wizard have never collaborated on anything in the past. So why would the Mad Thinker's android end up getting its homing signal from the Wizard's Wonder Gloves? It really makes no sense.
Wouldn't it make more sense if Android Man was homing in on Ben Grimm, one of the Mad Thinker's lifelong antagonists, to try to kill him? Why would it be going after the gloves? Makes no sense.
No, not at all. So anyway, the android busts in the window and starts fighting with Ben Grimm. He, once again, seems to forget for a moment that he doesn't have the strength of the thing, but then even once he realizes that, he thinks to himself, I ain't got the thing's strength anymore, but I still got the know-how from 1,000 battles. And so he's trying to use just his knowledge of kicking ass to be able to hold his own against the android temporarily. So, yeah, fight. They've got a big action scene here. Then he sees that Alicia is knocked, I don't know if it's all the way unconscious, but one way or the other, he's very much worried about her and puts on the Wonder Gloves. Now, you would think, and I know that what they're doing here is they're trying to set up that he's going to go back to being the thing, but you would think that it's like, oh, I put on the Wonder Gloves and now I can use the Wonder Gloves to kind of hold my own against this thing here.
Yes, it would make so much sense. Like, I don't need superpowers. I've got these Wonder Gloves. They're going to let me beat up people like the wizard was able to beat people up. That would make sense. And instead, no, he's like, I'm going to put them on. And then just the shock of putting them on will turn me into the thing again, which makes no sense.
And the instant he turns into the thing again, the Wonder Gloves have just vaporized.
Yes.
He's punching and there's no Wonder Glove on his hand.
Yes.
And then he tosses them aside in the next page. But anyway, it's a little frustrating. Right now, Johnny and Crystal had headed out in his Corvette to drive out through the country, or I guess on the wilds of Long Island or upstate New York or something like that. But they're listening to the radio and hear a radio report of this battle going on. And Johnny's like, look, honey, I'm sorry, you've got to drive the car back. I've got to fly in real quick to try and save Ben since he's not the thing anymore. So he flies in, homes in on the area, gets there after the fight is already done. And he comes and finds the android deactivated. Then he realizes, wait a minute, you're the thing again. But Reed said that if you ever turn back, that was it, that you could never become Ben Grimm again. Alicia says, oh no, Johnny, no. Says, don't let it bug you, baby. It's just the way I planned it. Ben, why should I be a nowhere nobody like plain Ben Grimm when I can be the thing forever? As he walks slowly away, with a lot of pathos.
Yeah.
So he's saying, yes, this is what I chose and this is what I want. But his body language is clearly showing, I don't know if it's quite the opposite, but at least a lot of consternation with the choice that he had to make.
Yeah. Which is the outline of this story is a good outline.
Yes.
You've got the police accidentally reactivate a mad thinker android. The mad thinker android ends up fighting the thing, or ends up fighting Ben Grimm, who realizes he has to become the thing permanently, partially because he realizes that Alicia really liked him better as the thing anyway. I think that is a fine outline. The particulars make no sense. Why did he bring the gloves? Why did putting on the gloves turn him into the thing? Nothing makes sense.
Why did the gloves attract the android?
Why did the gloves attract the android? Big question. No idea.
Yeah, I think you're right. The sort of emotional arc of the story and the broad strokes of what's going on with the main characters is very well done. But yeah, the actual plot points of the conflict that's going on makes zero sense.
Yeah. And I mean, there is also the issue that generally mad thinker androids are something that's been done to death at this point, and we didn't need a new one. But if you just need a plot motivator, then mad thinker androids are fine. They're sort of the lowest hanging fruit of Fantastic Four villains.
Yes.
So let me see if I have anything to say about this issue. She is Sue is at this point just wearing a muumuu, so it's, we still can't see her pregnancy bump, but it's not at all unbelievable that she has one. You didn't talk about the pinup splash of the two of them looking at us, and it sort of looks like the cover of a romance novel or something, or of a romance comic book, I guess.
Yes, I believe the adjective I would use is pensive.
Yes. Says, special note, we've included this page in answer to more requests than we can possibly count, as if you couldn't guess. So I guess people wanted to see a romance shot of the two of them. In the past, we've had the thing become Ben Grimm again and not ever get to see Alicia. We've never really had this moment before of Alicia actually getting to touch his face and let on to Ben that, I actually prefer you as the thing. I'm glad that we sort of progressed beyond where we've ever progressed before in terms of that.
Although I do notice she never says that.
No.
He seems to be entirely reading this into what her actions.
Right. But of course she wouldn't say it. Like, she would never say that. I like you less now. She wouldn't say that.
But it does sort of leave it a little bit ambiguous that, it could be, it's possible that this is all in his head and that he could have had a life with Alicia as Ben Grimm, but his own psychological hangups ended up undoing it. That is a valid reading, I believe, of what we're seeing, even if it's not necessarily the likely one.
Yeah. I say in my notes that it really would have made more sense if they're like, we're going through one of the Wizard's old hideouts and we've discovered the Wizard's android, and now the Wizard's android is going to seek out the Wizard's gloves. Like, that would have made more sense. But I say, Ben doesn't put the gloves on, ! Then why did he bring them? Why did you even have them on you? ? So that was the end of my notes. All right. Should we go ahead and move on to, let's do Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. number 5. And
a great issue, but can be a little confusing in some of the plot points.
Yes, and more importantly, a tragic turning point in the life of Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., because this is Steranko's last issue. Steranko has been doing this book for years, since back when it was one half of Strange Tales with Doctor Strange in the back and Nick Fury in the front. He did that for many years, and then he spun it off into his own book, but now having to do 20 pages a month instead of 11, I guess it was previously. And I think that's been wearing on him. He did issues 1, 2, 3, and then he took off for issue 4. And now he's back for issue 5. But then this is going to be it. He's going to go over to X-Men a little bit. Then he's going to have a legendary run on Captain America. And then he is going to be all done making full-length comics. The strain is already starting to show on poor Mr. Stranko. We have another gorgeous super mod, super psychedelic cover.
I do really wish I knew how he created like the effect on the concentric circles coming out from the bottom center of this cover. It's one thing just to have a series of concentric circles, but then built into it is sort of the optical illusion of another set of concentric circles at the top part of that thing. And I really wish, with the technology they had at the time, I knew how he accomplished that.
It's very cool. Very cool, hip, modern. And so it just says Scorpio on the cover. We see that Scorpio is back from the first issue with his Zodiac key, which, as I've said, will have its own history in the Marvel universe. So this issue is kind of a tease. It's very much a tease in that they keep teasing a certain plot turn that never actually arrives, and I think will not arrive until Scorpio eventually returns. I think Scorpio, for some reason, they never finish up this storyline in Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., even though the book will continue without Steranko. I think they don't finish up this storyline until an issue of Defenders some years later, where we finally find out who Scorpio is. But if you read this issue carefully enough, you can figure it out. It says, whatever happened to Scorpio, Stanley at its new S.H.I.E.L.D. drama, written, illustrated for Marvel by Jim Steranko. Sam Rosen letterer has visit from nephews Dave, Dan, and Joel. John Tartag inker gets parking fine. Because I should make clear, these are all headlines on a newspaper.
Yes.
We have a newspaper with Fury's gun laying on it and a watch. But the perspective is a little off on the vanishing lines on the newspaper and on the gun, but oh well.
Yeah, so it does look like the gun's kind of floating above it,
yeah,
in some way, but oh well.
We begin with, once again, Nick. So, and I should say that this is by far the worst inker they've ever had associated with Steranko. Steranko used to ink himself, and then ever since they started having other people ink Steranko, they've always had the best of the best inking him, whether it was Sinan or Giacoya or Adkins. But this is John Tartaglione, one of Marvel's weakest inkers, inking this, and it does show.
I don't think he does such a bad job. I think that with John Tartaglione, usually, in most cases, other than when he's inking Dick Ayers, where he seems to actually improve things, other than that, he usually is a downgrade for the art. I find that he's kind of neutral here. I don't think he really does any harm.
I guess. I mean, look at Val's eyes on the first real panel of the story on page 1. Those look like Tartaglione inked eyes to me. They don't quite look like they belong in the same head. But anyway, so we have Nick Fury hanging out with his girlfriend Val, who is just lounging around in a robe because presumably something is going on.
Well, a robe and sort of calf-high gladiator sandals.
Yeah, like Hercules. Yes. So then Nick Fury leaves. He visits a locksmith. The locksmith has a tremendous amount of character to his face. I guess he's probably based on Sidney Greenstreet or some other old character actor. It's not quite Sidney Greenstreet. It looks like it might be somebody else. But this guy is involved in some secret spy stuff with Nick. It says, what is going on this page? What is the...
Nick is coming to him and trying to ask for him to do something, get some information, break into somewhere for some reason. It's a little bit unclear, but in the end, he's looking for this guy to help him track somebody down with some information.
Yeah. So, and I should say that on the
previous page, they were talking a little bit about Nick's brother growing up, that They both used to play stickball at night. And
he says, me and my brother were the best night stickball players on Yancey Street. And then later in the page, he says, Val says to him, reading your horoscope for today. And he says, Mama Fury used to read them to us kids all the time. What's the good word? And she says, well, it says, beware, someone in your past will return today. So he's already mentioned his brother twice on this page. And then he finds out someone from his past will return.
Well, okay. Scorpio is also from his past, but
Yes, Scorpio, you may not know this, but Scorpio is in fact his brother.
Yes. You have mentioned that before. I read through this issue twice trying to find where they say that, and I saw them set it up, but they never actually pay it off.
No, they do not pay it off until I think years later in The Defenders. We then get a fantastic collage on page 4, a photo collage of various photographic equipment, and then someone who is a photo stand-in for Fury with just probably a eye patch strap sort of drawn across his head. It is just gorgeous. Fury is leaving the locksmith, suddenly gets attacked, but luckily he is in a flying car and he can take off. However, it does not work. Here comes Scorpio with his Zodiac key. Fury is sort of guns the car at him, trying to, I guess, run him over and kill him, but he's got a force field and Fury crashes the car. We get some great
and lots of crazy mod psychedelic color hold effects
yes.
through this whole thing.
And then we get sort of a pop art on page 8. Pop art, op art. It was never occurred to me the difference between pop art and op art on page 8 as Scorpion comes into view. At one point,
I've got to say one thing about that. Reading this on my iPad, sometimes I go ahead and have it done in panel by panel format. So it'll show me the full page and then it'll show me close-ups on each panel as I go through. And the close-ups on these panels, as you flip through them one by one, really does have an amazing effect when you actually see them superimposed on top of each other one by one. So I just wanted to say that was very well done in a way that Steranko could not have really thought about would be possible.
So at one point, I forget which kid it was, but one of my kids was just in preschool at the time. I was watching Yellow Submarine with them. So we're watching a phantasmagorical moment in Yellow Submarine where there's all this splashy paint on the screen. And I thought he said, I forget which one said, "That looks like a Pop-Tart, Daddy." And I said, "Oh, I guess it does kind of look like a Pop-Tart with the way they put the frosting splattered on top." And the kid then said, "No, it looks like op art," which they had been studying in preschool.
Really?
Indeed.
Wow.
It does look like op art and kind of like a Pop-Tart too. But anyway, so then Scorpio takes Nick Fury's identity, puts on a Mission Impossible style Nick Fury mask on front of his head. Scorpio, dressed up as Nick Fury, is hanging out with Dum Dum and Val, and he's doing a good job impersonating Fury because he's talking like Fury. And Fury is interacting with a senator named Senator Irksome,
who somebody online suggested is supposed to be Senator Dirksen.
Ah, okay.
Which I don't know whether he looks like it, although a couple of people have pointed out when I posted this panel online, a couple of people have also pointed out that he looks exactly like Will Ferrell's impression of Harry Carey.
Yeah. But he's saying to Senator Irksome, "Senator Irksome, glad you can make it. I hope the show won't put you to sleep." And Irksome says, "Never mind that, young man. I've done it once or twice myself already." Scorpio's Fury then says, "Just kidding, Senator. In fact, I can guarantee you won't forget this day for a long time to come." And then he thinks in his own voice, "Scorpio promises none of them will." We then find out what's going on. Everybody thinks that this is the real Fury they're talking to, and that then there is a life model decoy that is then going to be put through a gauntlet, going to be put through some sort of testing danger room type scenario. We then get a gorgeous, as we know, Steranko likes to do double page splashes on pages 12 and 13, because that's where the staple is. And so then we get a gorgeous 2-page splash on 12 and 13, once again, of this extremely dangerous room that he is in, with then the other people looking down from above. We then cut to, as Fury, who's been made up to look like Life Metal Decoy, is going through all the dangers in this room. We are now in his head as he is realizing what danger he is in, and realizing everyone who's watching him thinks that, they don't have to worry about him. He eventually gets a laser loose from this thing, uses it to attack.
So where he's prying that laser loose, is it just me, or does that look like a Frank Robbins panel?
Which is to say bad?
Well, just the sort of arms and legs in sort of strange ragdoll type position.
Yes, it is bizarre anatomy, as Frank Robbins, who will later be an artist on Captain America and The Invaders and a couple other books, was known for. Nick manages to climb up to be near Scorpio, who is still pretending to be Nick, and they get in a fight. The locksmith, there's a whole locksmith storyline here that I can't exactly follow, so we keep cutting away to that. But then eventually we get to the classic moment in any identity switching story where Val now has a gun and has to figure out which one of them to shoot and can't quite figure it out, which you always have to have in these stories. And then um, the locksmith comes in. I'm so sorry, folks. You count on me to recount these stories. The locksmith has made it into the thing, and then Val accidentally kills the locksmith.
Yes. This is why I made sure you were recapping this one, Matt. Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
No. I'm sorry, folks. You count on me to recap these things, and I am failing to do so. I can't exactly follow the whole locksmith storyline in this issue, but eventually they all figure out that Fury is actually Scorpio and that the LMD is actually Fury. Scorpio rips off his fake mask and is then being chased through the hallways by Nick Fury. Nick Fury finally finds Scorpio and says, "You," and is shocked to see who it really is. It is someone who he recognizes right away. But then all these other S.H.I.E.L.D. goons show up with their guns and shoot at Scorpio as Scorpio dives out the window and into the water, which, of course, buildings are never actually built that way. You never have a building where the window looks directly out onto water. And it always annoys me in movies and TV shows when that happens.
Unless it's a restaurant in a tourist beach town.
Yes.
I have been in buildings that had that exact kind of setup, but it's like in Charleston or, Mount Desert Island, Maine, or, something like that. It's not just some random warehouse in New York City.
Yes. Anyway, so then we know that Nick Fury has recognized who Scorpio actually is, but they do not then tell us who it is. It just says at the end, but nobody was ever found. Indeed, it seemed that the very tide itself had cleansed the harbor of evil in its own mysterious way, swallowing it up so that none may ever know what happened to Scorpio. Yet one man had to know and waited, watching through the lonely ebon hours, EBON, until the crimson dawn melted the ebbing blackness. What strange secret now lay locked in his heart? Which revelation had caused the taut, grim visage he now wore like a mask? What's the search over? Had it only begun? Fury asked himself a question 1,000 times over again. Would he ever know whatever happened to Scorpio? But for some reason, they don't pick this up once Stranko is off the book, and it will only be picked up into the Defenders years later.
One thing I did not notice until just now, the color hold sort of cloud pattern in the background is Nick's face.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
And the eye patch is framing the actual Nick Fury's head. Yeah. Wow. Okay, yeah, I had not caught that.
Beautiful stuff.
Beautiful.
So a lot of Gordy's heart in this issue. I am sorry. I can only apologize that I could not follow the plot or what the subplot involving the locksmith had to do with anything. But other than that, the plot is pretty simple. A classic disguised as each other storyline with, who do I shoot at the end? It's a simpler plot. I think. I don't know. I can't understand the whole plot, but from what I can understand, it's simpler than, say, the first issue was with the whole stand-up comedian storyline.
Yes.
But this is it for Stranko. Stranko has just had an absolutely wonderful run on this book, first in Strange Tales and then in his own book. He's one of my favorite writer-artists in the history of Marvel Comics, and we're about to get some pretty good X-Men and work out of him, and then some excellent Captain America work out of him. So we're not done with Stranko yet, but Stranko is done with S.H.I.E.L.D. Steve, what do you think of this issue?
I think that you hit most of it there. The art is stunning, groundbreaking, psychedelic, mod, unique in many different ways. The subplot that's in here, makes I don't know what's going on with it. I wouldn't even say it doesn't make any sense. It's just I don't understand what the heck is going on. And like how he's able to pick the locks to get into a top secret S.H.I.E.L.D. Training room kind of thing, and why he gets shot. That doesn't really hold together at all, other than just it gives us some nice visuals along the way and a sort of feeling that there is some sort of undercover work being done. But I can't really put the thing together in the end.
Nope. Neither of us can. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who can't. So then the issue ends with a letter from Don McGregor, future Marvel writer, and he ends by saying, For some, it might be the end, but for S.H.I.E.L.D., Steranko has proved that this is the beginning. And someone says, better believe it, Don, baby, this is only the beginning. Starting with the premiere issue of S.H.I.E.L.D., Steranko began his new style of writing. We predict it will revolutionize the whole comics industry. And if that isn't a beginning, what is? So not only are they not admitting that this is Steranko's last issue, but they are strongly implying that this is the beginning of a great new era of Steranko, when in fact he is gone.
Yes. So now we're moving on to Doctor Strange number 173. The cover is a wordless cover other than the title. We just see a huge image of Dormammu's head in green, oddly enough, with Doctor Strange laid out in front of him as though dead. And in the background, we have a pastiche of Ditko-esque interdimensional stuff.
Yes, looking good.
It's not bad, but it does look like somebody just trying to look like Ditko rather than bringing any life to it, in my mind.
I guess.
But in the issue, the title is ... While a World Awaits. Stan Lee scrutinizes and supervises a second spellbinding saga by Roy Thomas writer and Gene Colan artist. Inked by Tom Palmer, yay! Lettered by Artie Simek.
Yes, and it's immediately obvious that this is inked by Tom Palmer. The use of blacks is just fascinating. You know, I'm reminded of when Jim Shooter said to you, instead of doing solid blacks, you should look at Vince Coletta and the way he does blacks with hatching. And you were like, isn't he supposed to suck? And this is, to my mind, a much better example of how to do blacks with hatching. The blacks in the fire in the background and then in Strange's shadow is really gorgeous. And I just think this is just a gorgeous opening page.
Yeah, maybe he just thought that I'm more on a Vinnie Coletta level rather than a Tom Palmer level.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, no, it was meant to be an insult. Yeah. All right. So we start out in the middle of the battle between Doctor Strange and Dormammu. Dormammu is trying to get through, I forget what it's called, but it's like the door between worlds, and get through this door into our universe and bring his legions of demons along with him to attack Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Umar is trying to undermine Dormammu a little bit, like, hey, are you sure you should use your demons to attack Doctor Strange? Don't you think they might be a little more loyal to you if they know that you can do it on your own? And he's like, you're just trying to taunt me and get me to do something stupid. And then he goes and does the thing that she was taunting him to do. Yes. And we get a lot of mystical battles in this issue. So that goes on for several pages. Then we see
Page 3 is another splash page of Dormammu creating a mystical whirlpool of magical power, and just gorgeous inks. Just absolutely sumptuous.
Yeah, and the colorist had a nice time with this as well. The swirls are all yellow, orange, and green. And in the following pages, as Doctor Strange is caught up in this whirlpool, it's lots of greens and oranges. So they stick with that sort of theme. Then we see that Clea and Victoria Bentley are still tumbling through a mystic wasteland, basically, between universes. And I gotta say, the background on this one feels a little bit better executed than the same type of thing that we're looking at on the cover. I really feel that this has a lot of feeling of dimension and alienness and strangeness to it in a way that feels a little bit more inherent to the art. So they're tumbling along, and then they end up getting coated in protective bubbles, which they're like, oh, Doctor Strange must be doing this. Victoria Bentley is still thinking that, she has got a tear coming down her face as she's realizing that Doctor Strange is never going to love her.
I'm reminded of Roy Lichtenstein's, I don't care. I'd rather drown than call Brad for help. She looks like that.
Yes. You mean Irv Novik's.
Yes. Irv Novik's art, which then was shamelessly appropriated by Roy Lichtenstein.
That one was Irv Novik, right? I know that at least one of his really famous ones was.
I don't think that one was Irv Novik. I'm not sure, but I think he did
you're right.
One Irv Novik panel.
I'm thinking of one with a like World War II plane
fighter pilot.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of. One way or the other. Irv Novik. Good artist. I have got a T-shirt with some of his art on it, and he drew one of the earliest issues of Batman that I ever read.
Yeah, I love Verve of it.
Yes. So anyway, back to what we're doing here, though. So Victoria Bentley and Clea reappear in the Sanctum Sanctorum and interact a little bit with Wong.
I gotta say, when
and
I was a kid, Clea was always very sexy. You know, Clea was a regular cast member in Doctor Strange. Finally, by the time I was reading Doctor Strange comics, and everybody just loved going all out on Clea, which is funny because she was created by Ditko, who isn't known for creating super sexy characters, but she became at some point pretty sexed up. And I think we're sort of getting that for the first time here, because I think Cohen is really doing a nice job on both Clea and Victoria Bentley, as is Tom Palmer. There's still a lot of Ditko to Clea's character here, but in sort of a sexed up way.
Yeah, I can see that. So they're interacting with Wong for a little bit, and then there's a knock on the door, and they go and see it, and there's this very arrogant doctor who's there who knew Doctor Strange from back when he was a surgeon, and he's like, I'm gonna wait here until he gets back. And he's like, yeah, I know he's doing this whole like, oh, I'm a magician thing, but I've got a real business offer to make this guy. So
Yeah.
seems like an odd element to be adding to this particular issue with the stakes involved. But there you go. He is gonna hang out here until he can talk to Doctor Strange. Dormammu is able to manifest some mystic chains to bind Doctor Strange, and it looks like he is going to be defeated, and Dormammu is on his way through the door between worlds. But then Umar starts thinking, you know what? I really don't like my brother, and maybe Doctor Strange can knock him down a peg. Maybe I should free Doctor Strange. And then we see that this is actually being done by Clea using the orb of Agamotto to put the suggestion into her mind. And they make it very clear that if this wasn't something that she was susceptible to doing, then they wouldn't be able to just make her do it. But they just put the idea in her head. So then she frees Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is not able to keep Dormammu from coming through the door between worlds. They come through in the sky above New York City, because of course you always come out in New York City in the Marvel Universe. And Doctor Strange ends up congealing the clouds into solidity for them to have the fight on the clouds rather than come down into the city. And I noticed they use the word congeal twice in this issue, and both times they spell it with a J, which I don't think is the way you usually spell congeal.
No.
But they actually do that twice, which is a little bit odd. So they're having this battle on top of these solidified clouds, and there are a couple of different panels where people are, guys getting off a bus and saying that lightning bolt almost hit the Pan Am building. I remember stories from when I was a kid about these sudden storms mean that two giants are fighting. And then meanwhile, they actually are having this battle up in the clouds. So Doctor Strange is eventually able to subdue Dormammu, but it's partially due to Dormammu's own fault in that he swore an oath never to come to our dimension back in the Ditko days. He was forced to make this vow. But then in breaking that vow, he ends up being defeated. That there is some sort of magical power to this vow that he made. And so he ends up being undone by the power of this curse that he placed on himself, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Then Doctor Strange returns to the Sanctum Sanctorum. There is the doctor there, and I'm here to offer you a way to you can be doing things that are useful to humanity once again. I want you to be a consultant for me. And Doctor Strange is just, of service to humanity right after he saved the Earth from being overrun by demons. Says, you must excuse me, Dr. Benton. I'm quite tired. Perhaps some other time. Says, bah, I might have known I was wasting my breath. As a surgeon, you were greed personified, and now you're playing Wizard of Oz. You'll never be of use to anyone. Slams the door, and then he is left there exhausted. The matchless mortal whose spells can conquer any foe but his own inescapable loneliness. And I'm like, loneliness? He's got two women who are in love with him, like right here. They're right there.
Hey,
he
man.
doesn't have to be lonely.
That's how some guys are.
Anyway, a gorgeous issue. High stakes. I think it plays it out well. I think that it's a nice twist, a couple of nice twists that allow him to be able to defeat Dormammu, between Clea putting the idea in Umar's head and her following through on that, and then the curse that Dormammu had essentially placed on himself without him really realizing what was going on. I think that this is a well plotted and well drawn issue, and I think it is well worth my 12 cents. What say
Yes.
you?
This is an absolutely gorgeous issue. I'm going to give number one credit to Palmer, but really nicely done by Cohen. And it's funny, we always say, like, why is Daredevil so bad? Is it because Cohen is secretly plotting it? But if that's the case, then you would think Cohen would be secretly plotting this book as well, if Roy Thomas is also working with the Marvel method. But this book is really beautifully plotted, as you point out, and Daredevil is not. But this is just a really nicely plotted story. Yeah, I like how Clea is not only sending her power through to Umar, but so is Victoria Bentley with her latent powers, which have never really emerged. So this is finally sort of a bit of a payoff from all this talk they've done about Victoria Bentley's untapped power. Dormammu says at one point, for the first and only time, Immortal has defeated the dread Dormammu. And I'm like, dude, he's defeated you before. He's defeated you in all sorts of ways before. He defeated you with hand-to-hand combat. He's defeated you with mystical spells. He's defeated you in lots of different ways before, dude. I think you really can't go saying that. But yeah, you talked about how it's a little weird to have the other doctor show up, but I think it's just great because it's so ironic. It sets up this great ironic ending, going like, to think, instead of doing this, you could be of service to humanity. And Doctor Strange is like, yeah, dude, of service to humanity. You have no idea. And I always love it when there's, ironic dialogue like that. I like it when a character has secret honor. I talk about this in my books about how it's always good to have a hero with secret honor, because he doesn't then go like, okay, let me explain to you just how much in service of humanity I am. No, he doesn't do it. He's like, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. I'm going back to my room. Goodbye. And then, I mean, that's why he's feeling so lonely at the end, because he feels like, he's got this secret honor that is weighing on him that he can't share with people, even though you're right. He does have two fetching females who he could be spending his time with right now.
Yes. So a couple of other things that I just realized I forgot to mention. On page 18, at one point, Doctor Strange, and we've heard of the Wand of Watum. I know that's one of the mystical objects that in Doctor Strange's world. But he, in this case, says, and now let the whirling winds of Watum rise from the nether regions. And the winds of Watum that rise from the nether regions sounds like a dad joke of some sort. Hey, pull my finger to hear the winds of Watum rise from my nether regions. Also, it's interesting. At one point, Wong, in his dialogue, refers to himself as one who has no mystical powers, which I'm pretty sure, I know obviously in the MCU that's not true. And I'm pretty sure that in the comics, they have had him become as powerful as Doctor Strange at some point along the way. So that is no longer true. He also does have a little bit of that uncomfortable dialogue of, this humble one thinks, such and such. And you get a little bit of that in here. But, it's 1968. What you going to do?
What you going to do? Okay, let's go into Prince Namor the Summoner, number 6, Death to the Vanquished. So we are still in a wonderful spot on this book where we have Stanley editor, Roy Thomas writer, John Buscema artist, Dan Atkins anchor, and Buscema and Atkins are just killing it. But Buscema has begun experimenting with this issue. He has set himself a little challenge, and I think it is gorgeous. He has set himself a challenge. He's also set the uncredited colorist a challenge, because he has decided, starting with this splash page, to have a lot of borderless panels, or in this case, a panel borderless splash, which means that the colorist has to create sort of a arbitrary color border that is in sort of blob form that goes behind him. And I think the colorist is doing an excellent job doing that here. It says, and to the vanquished death, we begin with Tiger Shark is still dragging off Dorma, leaving Submariner behind, crushed under a bunch of rubble. Meanwhile, inside Dr. Dorcas's lab, Tiger Shark's sister is getting herself all dolled up for a little scuba diving. What are you doing in that skin diving gear? And she says, I'm going after my brother, the man you turned into a bestial manfish. But first she realizes she has to save Submariner, who is still caught under the wreckage. So she is swimming around. She does that. And then
the Submariner thinks that she is Tiger Shark at first and actually knocks her unconscious. And then he's like, oh man, what did I just do?
And then he takes her back to Dr. Dorcas, who is still being a jerk about everything. Dr. Dorcas agrees to look after her until she wakes up from Submariner accidentally knocking her out. And then Submariner goes off after Tiger Shark. Tiger Shark and Dorma are on their way to Atlantis, but they are briefly attacked by a gigantic sea serpent, which appears to be one-armed in a way that's kind of cool and bizarre looking. And
it's also kind of weird and wrinkly in a way that is very tactile and not something that I would have expected. And it's kind of cool looking.
Yeah. Well, you say you wouldn't expect it. You would sort of expect it from Buscema. That's the sort of thing Buscema is kind of known for. But from any other artist, you wouldn't have expected.
Well, the kind of wrinkliness that it has seems almost unique to me. I don't know. Anyway, to my mind, it jumps out at me as remarkable.
Yeah. Tiger Shark and Dorma show up in Atlantis. They do the classic thing you always have in these stories of I will fight your greatest champion for see who gets to rule Atlantis. And he does and quickly cleans the guy's clock. And so now he is now the ruler of Atlantis. Now you will notice on every single page, or almost every single page, there is at least one panel without a panel border. Not every single page. I'm going through them, but there's a lot of panels without panel borders here. And he's also doing it in Adventures this month. This is his new thing. And it is, I think, just gorgeous. It feels very hip and modern and 1968. And I think that it's fun what the colors gets to do with it. Finally, Namor is still just occasionally once an issue thinking about Destiny. Like, oh, right, I'm supposed to be fighting Destiny. He's my arch villain. But I keep getting distracted by all these other things. We actually check in with Destiny for the first time in a while as he finds some sort of mechanical object he's been searching for. He sort of dresses a bum going through a abandoned New York City back alley, which of course there are no alleys in New York City. He actually says, no one saw me enter this alleyway, as indeed you would not expect them to, given that I am in New York City and there are no alleyways here. But for some reason, Marvel Comics has decided that in their version of New York City, there's lots of alleyways. He finds something that I've acquired the final piece I need to locate the one man on this planet who I am pledged to destroy. So apparently he's been unable to find Submariner, but now he has. Submariner finally shows up in Atlantis. One of the things John Buscema always loves to draw is people lounging on thrones. Kirby also liked to draw people lounging on thrones, but Buscema has his own unique way he does it, and he just does a great job with it. Tiger Shark is lounging on a throne when Submariner is like, hey, I want to fight you for rule of Atlantis. And they fight for a long time until they do the classic thing that you do all the time in comics of like, I am holding this trident above you and I'm going to, smash it down into your head. And then you get to a sort of neatly cropped panel of like, now I smashed the trident down. And then you cut to, he has not actually smashed open the Tiger Shark's head. And Tiger Shark says, you missed me on purpose. Says, I, fallen one, for to name her no prize is worth the cost of a single human life. Which I don't know. I feel like we've seen him kill people or things in the past, but oh well. He puts Tiger Shark in prison. Of course, no one ever stays in prison long in Atlantis, but oh well. And then we have, for the first time in a long time, Submariner with his crown and trident and cape warding it over Atlantis. Namor has regained a throne, a crown imperial, yet his proud people have no homeland to call their own. That they must have before Namor may deign to follow his own inner call, before he may once again pursue the villain called Destiny. And that says Imperious Rex. So I think this is a really nice issue. I think it's just gorgeously penciled and inked by Buscema and Adkins. It's a very classic Namor story of fighting to become ruler of Atlantis and then fighting to replace someone as ruler of Atlantis. It's a classic story, but I think that the okay writing by Roy Thomas and fantastic art by Buscema and Adkins. What do you think of this issue?
Yeah, I generally liked it, with the caveat that I'm usually, not usually the biggest fan of Submariner solo stories and not generally the biggest fan of stories about an absolute monarch who ends up having to take power by force. But that being said, I think this is well done. One little plot point that you skipped over is that we've got a number of appearances by the Council of Elders, and Tiger Shark is needing to win over the approval of the Council of Elders, that they clearly have mercy as one of their virtues. And they at one point make Tiger Shark not kill Lord Seth. They're like, you have to do what we want you to do, or else we're not going to recognize you as our monarch. And he's like, okay, sure, fine. I won't kill Lord Seth. And then at the end, when Mariner chooses not to kill Tiger Shark, Vashti says, essentially that was a tests that the council had for you that they were not letting on to see whether you would have mercy upon your enemies. And
Yes.
only if you did would you then be welcomed back as our monarch.
Yeah, good point.
The art in this issue is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's definitely worth it for that, if nothing else.
Were you noticing the borderless panels, or was that just me who
I
noticed it?
I did not actually, but now that you point it out, I now notice it, and yeah, I like it.
Yeah. It means there's a lot of white space on the page too. That was sort of the revolution that was going on in graphic design at the time, was having more white space in magazine advertisements and in generally magazine layout and interior graphic design.
Like the famous Volkswagen Beetle ad,
Yes.
the think small, and it just had a small little image of a Volkswagen Beetle in the middle of a big blank page. Yeah,
Yes.
I can see that. All right.
It's just really gorgeous.
Indeed. So let's move on to Captain Marvel number 6. Yeah. No, we probably shouldn't have ended with this issue. But,
I feel like this is Marvel's weakest book, and I sort of felt like it'd be better to tack it on to the end of this 5-issue episode rather than have it be a bigger part of another episode of our next episode, because I feel like we should just dispense of this very quickly. It's just a shockingly bad book.
yes. So we have a wordless cover with Captain Marvel being vanquished by some big, weirdly dressed monster. In the Path of Solam, Solam, presented with consummate cosmic creativity by Stan Lee editor, Arnold Drake writer, Don Heck artist, John Tartaglione inker, Sam Rosen letterer. So Don Heck and John Tartaglione, not exactly an auspicious start to
Nope.
what we're seeing here. So we start with Captain Marvel fighting some kind of a monster. It turns out that this is some kind of virtual reality training thing that he's getting on his Kree ship. Jan Rog at one point tells medic Una to basically turn it up to 11. She's like, but that might kill him. But then even so, he's still able to defeat the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The placement of black spots in the art in this issue is one place where it's really strange. It like I
Yes.
was just noticing on Jan Rog's face on the
Yes.
bottom of page 4.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or the top of page 3 or the bottom of page 3, just bizarre spotting of blacks on faces.
Yeah, and that continues throughout the issue. Anyway, Captain Marvel heads back down to become his alter ego once again, but the Kree ship ends up having some kind of a technical difficulty, and they're going to have to land in order to fix it. And apparently, when they are coming into Earth's atmosphere, there will be a brief moment when they will be visible, even though they're generally cloaked. Carol Danvers happens to be driving along the road to the base when she catches this out of the corner of her eye and is like, what the heck is going on there? And then looks back at the road and finds that Captain Marvel in his alter ego is just walking on the road in front of her, which
Mm-hmm.
is a little bit odd. So anyway, she screeches to a halt. She's like, did you see that UFO? And he's like, oh, well, UFO? What are you talking about? I don't know anything about a UFO. And then there's a big whoosh as it lands. And then she ends up jumping into his arms, which seems a little bit odd, but okay. He's like, not at all. I prefer the female side of you to the policeman. She's like, never mind that. The Kree ship is able to take back off again, and before they get to it, and they can still see the marks that it left behind. But he is like, who knows what that is. We then see the thing they're working at the Cape right now, which is some kind of big solar laser thing that's going to take the light from the sun and then concentrate it into a laser beam and then beam it to Saturn for some reason.
Yeah.
And I do wonder.
Generally speaking, writers never knew what to do with solar power. It always seemed like, well, this is kind of futuristic and science fiction-y, this idea of solar power. So we have to somehow turn it into a menace. Like, oh, how will the menace of solar power endanger mankind? And that doesn't work because there is no menace of solar power. It is, in fact, a very peaceful, benign technology.
They were
And
even
so,
still doing that in the 80s. There was that issue of Iron Man where they were collecting solar power in satellites and then microwave beaming it down to the Earth. And then the microwave beams kept on missing and killing cattle and stuff like that.
yes, even the James Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun, has this vaguely menacing solar power finale. It just doesn't work, folks.
So this weird solar laser thing they've got, I do wonder whether Don Heck may have had an issue of Popular Science magazine or something like that with a diagram of what a carbon dioxide laser tube looks like, because it's got this weird swirly curly Q thing going on around the outside of it. And there is a curly Q tube of glass that is indeed inside a CO2 laser tube. And
Mhm.
so I'm wondering whether he may have seen a diagram somewhere and then used that as part of his basis for what he's doing here. Well, Captain Marvel knows that there's a danger to this that the humans don't know about because it's beyond our science. He starts trying to warn them. Jan Rog somehow ends up sending some kind of pain zap to him in order to stop him from warning the humans. They end up running the test anyway, and somehow this solar laser ends up turning into a photokinetic being,
Uh-oh.
energy converted into a living, breathing mass. And it is referred to as SOLAM, solar amplifier or something like that, I want to say.
I think it's a female and it's solar ma'am. So, excuse me, ma'am, are you
Yes.
solar? Yes, I'm solam.
Okay, sure, fine. Why not? Captain Marvel gets into costume and goes to fight Solam. At one point, it seems to be losing power until it then goes and finds the gymnasium on the base. And they've got a sun lamp room. Now, why you need a sun lamp room in Florida is anybody's guess, but one way or the other, it's
I
able to use that to repower itself. Yes?
I guarantee you there are hundreds of tanning salons in Florida as we speak.
I guess probably so. Captain Marvel ends up figuring out that what we need to do is actually overpower this thing. So we need to give it more energy, more solar energy, but we need to get just exactly the right amount. So we need to link a bunch of computers together. So they use the computer there at the Cape together with ones from Carnegie Tech, Caltech, and MIT, and they link them together into some sort of network of some sort of thing. I don't know what you would call such a thing, but
Yes.
right? Which actually is sort of the way the internet originally started, the US military and some colleges. You could consider this the birth of the internet here.
Yes.
Although on page 17, the last panel of the page, once again, the just bizarre spotting of blacks on the character's face there.
Yes. It's bizarre.
They're able to calculate exactly the right amount of solar energy they need to overload this thing. They do end up overloading it, but in the end, we see that this connection of computing has somehow attracted the attention of Quasimodo, and he will be showing up. Now, wasn't Quasimodo showing up in? Didn't he just show up in
X-Men.
X-Men?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird. Why Quasimodo getting his moment here? But
Yeah.
that's the end of the issue. Just a poorly written, poorly drawn issue.
And
If
poorly inked. Oh my God, the inks. Yes, just page
yes,
17, panel 2 might be the worst inked panel in all Marvel Comics history up until this point. In terms of
the
bizarre.
spotted blacks on the character in the background there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Bizarrely blotchy. Just, the only word to describe this whole issue is blotchy. It's
yeah.
bizarre.
Well, Andy looks kind of wall-eyed too,
Yeah.
which yeah, it's not good.
Yeah. Tartaglione has done some bad inking in the past, but this is the worst inking we've seen from him. And he is interacting with Heck in a way that is resonating to create super badness.
There's an old Bloom County strip where Opus is writing a movie review, and there's something to the effect of badness oozes from every bad frame of this bad film.
Yes.
And then at the end, he says, well, it may not be that bad, but it sure ain't good.
Yes.
I'm reminded of that review in this case.
Yes, I say in my notes, the Splash looks like Ditko if Ditko sucked. The virtual reality monster he's fighting has a very Ditko face. The way Captain Marvel is sort of flying about looks like Ditko, but this is bad Ditko. I do like the idea that we begin with him fighting a monster and it turns out it's a virtual reality training exercise. That's something that, other science fiction things have done and done better. And it's sort of a fun way to begin a story. And the whole idea of, it's virtual reality, but you can actually get killed if somebody is tampering with the machine. That's another thing that'll get done on Star Trek Next Generation and lots of other places.
Yes.
The whole idea at the ending here of like, it's a monster that absorbs energy, but the way to defeat it is to hit it with more energy and to dissipate it is classic sci-fi and something that will be done better in a, John Byrne in Fantastic Four goes back and does an old-fashioned Marvel monster story, and that's what's going on there. So it's similar to that and get some points for being before that. But yeah, that was done much better. And of course, we begin with Jan Rog going, I know what to do. I don't think you're really trying to destroy the Earth. I'll report you to Ronan the Accuser, which, like, hasn't he done that over and over and over again over the course of this book and gone,
I believe so.
Ronan, I'm tattling, I'm snitching, I'm tattling to Ronan that he's not really trying to destroy the Earth. And every time Ronan's been like, it's cool. I'm monitoring the situation. I think he's doing a good job trying to destroy the Earth. Stop bugging me. But here he's going to do it one more time.
Yes, well, Jan Rog is not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
No, indeed he's not. A truly terrible issue. Just spectacularly bad inks and bad pencilers. So that's it for this issue. So we should go ahead and wrap up part 2 of many parts of October 1968.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We really appreciate it. Our Patreon, once again, if you are interested, is patreon.marvelrereadclub.com. That will redirect you to our page. And we will finish up the month of October 1968 next week. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Take care. Stay safe out there. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, we now have a Patreon where you can show your appreciation. If you've got a few bucks, head over to patreon.marvelrereadclub.com to support us. Also, you can still rate and review us at your podcatcher of choice, and that would be greatly appreciated as well. You can find us online at marvelrereadclub.com, as well as Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. See you next time.